guys, this is Bones.
Fofo here.
And we're back with Behind Relationship Goals.
What's up?
But cheers.
We are back!
Hey.
Finally! After forever!
Akala ko sasabihin mo, after 4 years, parang, look.
Well, it felt like 4 years, and obviously we have a new beautiful setup.
Yeah! New couch, guys. So, may mga life updates din kami na ibibigay sa inyo. Ang saya kasi, finally, nakapag-podcast tayo ulit.
Yes, and what is the topic for this podcast?
The topic for this podcast is, drumroll fofo.
Generational gaps. So obviously, Bones and I are millennials. Before us were the boomers. And after us is Gen Z. And supposedly, Gen A's exist in the wild already. But we're not gonna get to that just yet.
Nakakatawa kasi akala ko sasabihin mo, may generational gap kami ni Bones. Layo ng age gap natin. And before we move on with the rest of the podcast, today's episode is brought to you by Nescafe Decaf. As we juggle everything that comes with adulting, I've been learning how important it is to carve out those moments and just relax and unwind.
Yeah, and speaking of unwinding, we're so excited to have Nescafe Decaf as our partner for this episode. It's perfect for those slow down moments, giving us that smooth, bold coffee flavor minus the caffeine. It's that warm hug in a cup that lets you savor life's slower, more peaceful moments, and we're thrilled to share it with you today. Alright, let's get into the meat of this podcast. I'm very excited. I told Bonizi I can't wait to have another episode with her. So, generational gap. When we were brainstorming on what topic to discuss, this naturally came up.
Yeah.
So, as we mentioned, we're both millennials. We have parents who are boomers, and we have siblings who are considered Gen Z na.
Yes.
And at this age, we super feel the gaps between the generations and how it has shaped our relationships with people, shaped the way we view things, shaped how we, I guess, think about others before we even meet them.
And even how we deal with problems, like how we process all these different things.
Yeah, I think this particular topic really hit home with us because we also saw similar stories online.
Yeah.
So on social media, we feel like, oh, nga, no, this is exactly what we feel as well in terms of the gaps between the generations. So we want to dive into that, share our own experiences, and we think that you guys will be able to relate to it. If you do, comment down in the comment section. So right off the bat, we're going to start out with a very juicy topic, which is
Financial
challenges. So I see it so often now on X, on Threads, on Instagram.
And even with the people that we talk to, like our siblings, our friends, our colleagues, it's something that is talked about a lot.
Yeah, and that particular topic is millennials are financially burdened.
Yeah.
Do you read about that?
Yeah, I always see articles na hindi tayo kasing swerte ng mga magulang natin because our parents had it better. They were able to purchase things,
assets,
yeah,
houses, and for us, it's not available to us.
Oo nga eh.
And I think there's a huge gap there. So let's set the table. For us, it's not easy to buy a house,
No.
or a lot, or a living space because everything is so much more expensive.
And complicated.
So I think we all know that. But from my experience, I've also had relatives and friends who are boomers, and some of them would say, bakit wala pa kayong bahay? Hindi ba kayo nakaipon para sa bahay?
Hindi, tsaka ano na yun eh, parang, di ba, there was always this quote-unquote way of doing things na kailangan mag-asawa ka, tapos bibili kayo ng bahay together, tapos magkakaanak kayo. Parang that was like the quote-unquote standard way of doing things back then.
Yeah, and it always seemed like a given back then that there would be enough funds to support that kind of lifestyle. But
there's always going to be land available. There's always going to be a house to buy. Na
there's always going to be
kayang-kaya.
money to afford everything.
Yeah.
But then I saw a really interesting stat that, no, don't quote me on this one, but it said something to the effect that for boomers, it took them 5 years worth of salary to buy a house and lot.
Seryoso?
Roughly, yeah. So if let's say, for us naman, for millennials, it takes us 25 years.
Baka nga, mas matagal
yeah,
pa.
I mean, these are just numbers naman. I don't have the exact
Yeah.
ones. It took us 25 years of our yearly salary to buy a house in lot.
Fully paid na yun.
Fully paid na yun for boomers, ha? So,
5 years,
ang layo.
fully paid.
5 years fully paid. So,
Grabe.
maglalabas sila ng home loan. And then, yung 5-year home loan na yun, tapos na yun.
Grabe
Tayo, 5 years, tapos i-rolyo pa natin yun 5 beses.
Actually, gusto ko nga sabihin, parang when we think about, oh, can I buy something kaya? 5 years, pwede bang down payment muna yun?
Oo.
'Di ba usually when you
Tama.
buy like a condo, 'di ba, parang may down payment na sakto lang, pero gusto mo matagal yung pagbayad mo ng down payment.
Oo. So basically, to simplify, yung bilis ng pag-akyat ng presyo ng mga bahay at lupa was way faster than sa pag-akyat ng sahod ng mga tao. On average.
On average.
So imagine that predicament. And I mean, this is a stat that I only read this year.
Yeah.
But I've been a working millennial for 15 years, just like all my other peers. Hindi namin naiintindihan.
Yeah.
Kaya minsan, syempre makikipag-away ka sa mga ibang tao na parang, bakit hindi ka ba masipag or hindi ka ba nag-iipon? Parang hindi nila maintindihan because for the older generation, it was by the numbers easier to purchase assets.
Yeah.
And then now, sobrang yaman na nila kasi sobrang nag-appreciate na yung mga assets na nabili nila. So, when I read that stat, I was blown away. It was a glass-breaking moment for me because it made me feel for all my colleagues and everyone in the millennial generation because, yes, it is just a different status quo now.
Yeah, and then iniisip ko rin kasi, even now, yung mga bilihin, sobrang tumataas na nagki-keep up ba yung sweldo para ma-maintain yung, just like, the daily lifestyle that you have. Na may savings ka pa, na meron ka pang rainy day fund. All those that come into place, parang paano na yung mga Gen Z? Kasi tayo mga millennials, quote-unquote, burden na.
Yeah. How does it make you feel knowing that realization? We didn't know it kasi
Yeah.
for me, there was frustration growing up and, making my way through the working world because I was like, bakit yung mga, let's say, tito or tito ko, ang dami na nilang nabili. Na-support nila yung pamilya nila at this
Yeah.
age. Well, now pa lang, I'm like, just a family of 1 or 2. I'm like, parang ang mahal nun, no? Given the status quo that we're in, it's also created, I guess, a different mindset for us.
Yeah.
Wherein maybe in past generations, you could have one housewife in the relationship, and then the other one is a working person.
Or baliktad.
Or baliktad. But nowadays, not only is it almost kind of necessary to be dinks.
Yeah.
Which
Dual
is
income.
Dual income, no kids.
Yeah.
But at the same time, kailangan naman yung mga side gig.
Kailangan talaga.
Kailangan
Kasi,
madiskarte ka.
alam mo, naisip ko din dati, okay, now that you're asking me how I feel, when I was younger, I would always think, I just wanna grow up and like save some money. Tapos at the end of it, I just wanna be like a housewife and like take care of my kids in the future. Kasi yun yung ideal that was pressed upon us, na parang the husband would provide, yada, yada, yada. But then as I grew up in the industry, grew up with you, and we got to work together, hindi rin naman talaga kakayanin na ikaw lang talaga yung magpo-provide. Or kung kakayanin man, we definitely have to change our lifestyle talaga. And there's nothing wrong naman with changing your lifestyle in general, but for us, in the way that we wanted to travel, we wanted to do so much, we wanted to save a certain amount, parang being a dual income household just made sense for us. And we were just lucky enough na we were able to provide for our dual income household.
Yeah, but this does feel more like a requirement that both parties in a relationship are working. If you want to be able to really save up or be able to
Yes.
do other things and eventually attain some luxuries.
Pero grabe no, like before, yung mindset na may isang provider tapos may isang nasa bahay, parang it was just a given. Na parang, yes, meron
That
talagang
was more,
isa.
it felt like more of the norm. So of
Yeah.
course we don't know, we're just kind of like pulling from stories
Yeah.
that were told to us, but it felt like kind of the norm na
Yeah.
parang mas kinakaya ng sahod ng isang tao sa relationship bilihin at expenses ng isang family.
That was something that you guys were more used to, no, in your family.
Yes, in my family, like, kahit sa family ng dad ko and family ng mom ko, I think that there were more single income families that were well supported.
Yeah.
Unlike now it's so different because I wanted to share that when I thought about it, most of my siblings, most of your siblings, and our cousins, lahat sila may trabaho and then may side gig.
Kahit tayo, ganun din.
Influencer, di ba? Lahat influencer.
tayo.
And some people, bakit ka influencer? Kailangan ko ng extra
Kailangan talaga ng
Diba?
extra. And you may think, di ba, nag-artista naman kayo, kayang-kaya na yan. Pero sa totoo lang, it really makes a difference kapag may sideline kang work. Kaya social media has created this whole new area of income for millennials, Gen Z, even boomers now, na shucks, ang saya na meron akong sideline, meron akong extra na nasa-save dahil dun sa sideline work ko.
But thinking about that, it did give me a thought. Na, okay, we are so busy taking on extra work, even though, let's say, we enjoy it, for extra income. But when you think about it, if there was no pressure or need to have extra income because sapat na yung kinikita natin, then where would that time go? And I would think it would go to hobbies.
Oh, definitely.
Arts.
If I didn't have to do sideline na extra, everyday nagpipilates ako. Wow!
And then, so yeah, diba? So
may
parang
ganun talaga, everyday talaga.
different options yan Parang different options are available to you depending on your reality.
Yeah.
So I can imagine though some, millennials get frustrated because some of them maybe they don't want to do extra work.
Yeah. I do know some people.
Diba? They want to be more carefree and live a chill life, yet the circumstances just don't allow for that. And then of course it doesn't help that maybe we're going back to the generational gap. Talking to, the older people, your mentors, people important to you, your parents, relatives, titos and titas, hindi nila naiintindihan.
Yeah.
Because that wasn't their lived experience.
Okay, I think we can jump off to the next generational gap from what you just said.
Okay.
It's the grind life. The grind life is something where I definitely see a generational gap because you have boomers, millennials, and Gen Z that attack the work life so differently. Okay, let's take it from our experience first
Okay, go.
as millennials. Personally, both of us were used to quote-unquote grind life na talagang tara, work lang tayo hanggat kaya natin, hanggat magkasakit tayo, magtatrabaho tayo. And I guess that's just the way that we were brought up in the industry and with the circumstances na meron tayo sa life natin. So, how does the grind life make you feel? And what were the situations where you felt like, bakit ka ganyan? Like, to another generation?
Okay, so for me on a personal level, nasanay na ako.
Yeah, it's just our
So
norm.
parang natanggap ko siya. I didn't have a lot of pushback, to be honest. I was like, okay, you just kind of need to work hard and work hard and
Grind
work hard.
lang,
But I
go
did
lang.
see it with others nga.
Yeah.
Like with my other friends, everybody have different personalities. Some, they like talagang ratsyada lagi sa trabaho. There are others na parang, okay, I want to clock in, do my responsibilities and duties. And then I want to be able to clock out and parang leave that work persona behind.
Yeah.
So for me, I'm okay, but I see how other millennials, other colleagues can struggle with it.
Yeah.
And when I guess juxtapose that with the boomer generation, ang dami nilang bakasyon.
Ang dami, no?
Yeah, I remember
Like,
parang
once
before,
a year, dapat 1 month nagbabakasyon.
Yun nga parang I remember before parang, oh, let's go on a trip abroad. Ganong katagal? 3 weeks, 4 weeks, huh?
Yung boomer
Ganong
generation
katagal?
to, no?
Oh, yeah, the boomer generation. Or parang, let's go away for like 2 weeks. I mean, we've never had a vacation longer than 2 weeks.
Oh, for 10 days, yung
And
pinakamatagal
we've been
natin.
working for what? 15 years.
Okay, we've had a 10-day vacation. That was the longest. And it felt like,
Forever.
na-guilty ako.
Nag-guilty pa tayo,
Na-guilty
diba?
pa tayo na nagbakasyon tayo kasi feeling natin ang daming nasayang na work opportunities.
Okay, you know what, Mon? So we've been talking about this financial challenges, home ownership, work culture.
Yeah.
We've been comparing boomers and millennials. What are your thoughts of comparing those three aspects to Gen Z? How is it different for them? In our opinion. Siyempre, we
Okay.
don't know because we're not Gen Z. So let's try to figure it out.
I feel like, although at that time, especially when we were starting, we knew what we wanted. I feel like it's a mix-up between Gen Z definitely knows exactly what they want. So they do exactly what they want as well.
Really? Why is that?
Parang they're like, I know how I want to feel about a situation and I won't let others' opinions affect me and my decision. Parang ganon. Parang they don't let other people push them around. And they're like,
Para very hardened yung mindset nila
yeah,
or what
and
they
they're
think
like,
about things.
this is how I want to go about work. If you make me feel a certain way, I won't let you disturb my peace.
You know, I always hear things like that. I always hear stories like that.
Yeah, because that's how I see it. From an outsider's point of view, I don't know a lot of Gen Zs to be able to deep dive into this, but from a millennial's perspective, that's how I see it. At first, though, I have to admit, iba yung pagtingin ko because I'm used to the grind life and I'm used to just being a yes person, which has its pros and cons, guys. You don't have to be a yes person all the time, but parang I learned from Gen Z, you can say no. Diba? There are opportunities where you have the option to say no to something if you feel like it's not the right time for these things. Diba? Don't disturb your peace. And then on the other hand, parang I'm a pessimistic person. So if I say no all the time, edi nawalan din ako ng opportunity. Trying to balance that out and seeing that perspective from the younger generation has really helped me parang just at least put things into perspective and think about it from a bigger picture rather than just from your little hole.
And before we proceed with the podcast, I'd just like to remind you that this episode is sponsored by
Nescafe Decaf.
You know, Bones, when life gets overwhelming, it's not always about fixing everything right away. Sometimes it's about pausing and letting yourself breathe.
Exactly, and that's where Nescafe Decaf has become a favorite for us. It's about finding joy in the pause, in the calm moments at the end of the day.
It's the kind of coffee that makes you slow down, sip, and just appreciate the now. It's about unwinding and not rushing.
So to everyone listening, take those little moments to relax because you deserve it and Nescafe Decaf makes it even better.
And now back to the conversation. You know what, Bones? With what you said, I always hear stories about Gen Z being that way. But from my lived experience, I actually don't see it a lot.
Really?
Like, it's just from the Gen Z friends that I have.
Which is the Running Man cast, halos.
No. Like, even my cousins,
Ah,
a lot
okay.
of them, Divyanka, lahat sila mabait. Parang
Yeah.
very flexible.
Yes.
So not so hardened and stubborn. Because the sense that I get from stories of other people is that Gen Z are
Stubborn
very
daw.
stubborn.
Pero
Parang they know
ako
what
hindi
they
rin
want.
hindi rin ganun yung tingin ko. Hindi stubbornness yung tingin ko sa Gen Z.
Yeah.
It's more of owning what they want and owning themselves and knowing this is me and this is the world that I want to, this is how I want to take on the world.
Yeah, I'm so curious if we have a generational gap in terms of how we view Gen Z now that we're talking about it. Diba? Because the Gen Zers think about themselves in a completely different light, which is very possible.
Yeah,
right?
but I mean, this is, syempre, for those that are watching, syempre, this is our POV din
yeah,
naman.
this is our lived experience.
Everything that we're saying here is not like, this is not like the hard fact. You know what it is, diba? Hindi naman tayo news channel. It's really just a POV of how we see things and how we see the world. Ito yung mga Gen Z nating anak. Ayan,
Yeah.
ito si Chia
Soba,
tsaka si
come here.
Soba.
Jumping off what you just said, the way I see Gen Zers, if I were to try to put their general persona into a box, for me, it would be that they have a better sense of who they are and,
Yeah.
and what they want to do.
Yeah.
I think kasi when we grew up, because the boomer generation was so successful,
We wanted to be like them.
we wanted to be like them.
For sure.
So we wanted to follow their path of go to school, go to college, get a job, have kids, have a family, have a happy life.
Parang I wanted to be that kind
But
of
we
successful.
were never able, and that's how we were built and programmed. So
Yeah.
remember, our parents would be like, yeah, do this, do that, because this is what worked. And then when we tried it out, it just didn't work as well.
Yeah, and I think in that process, ako, like, I forgot about who I actually was or like what I actually loved doing. And I was so focused on the grind life na nakalimutan ko yung sarili ko.
Yeah, so the realization there is that for the Gen Zers, ain't none of them wanted to say, oh, I want to be like the millennials.
They're like, I'm just gonna be myself.
Kasi hirap na hirap tayo. It's like, look at these struggling fools.
These struggling oldies in their mid-30s.
No, but I mean, of course, we're just making light of the situation a little bit. But, I mean, it does make sense, diba? Parang, boomers were idolized because, at least even for me, on a
Yeah.
personal level, I was like, wow, ang galing nila. Parang they have all these things. They seem like they have such a great life. And then tayo millennials, I mean, definitely, we've had more challenges. So I think that's given the next generation an opportunity to find themselves. They're like, let us be our own. And I think that is how I see my Gen Z friends and the Gen Z people in my life. Now, they really are taking ownership and trying to find themselves.
Yeah.
Some successfully, some unsuccessfully, but I think it seems that the common thread they have is they're on that journey. Here's a topic that's very touchy, but I do want to talk about it. Mental health.
Yes. Mental health, the generational gap.
So let's start with the boomers.
Okay.
So I think during that generation, mental health was just not the thing. I don't think there was a mental health term during their generation.
I think for them, it was more
I
like,
think.
you're acting up or like something's wrong with them.
Yeah, pero
like,
hindi nila naintindihan, they aren't able to put labels to properly figure out what people are feeling.
or even just like process what was happening to like the people around them.
Yeah, so from one end, for the boomers, parang it just did not exist. The mental health term did not exist. And then, of course, the pendulum has swung the other way
Yeah.
to the millennials, where mental health, I mean, it's a huge thing. There was a time when advocacies were just purely for
Mental health. Yeah.
mental health. And because of that, we've been able to put a label on so many things to the point that some people were overwhelmed by all the labels.
Yeah.
What I noticed was that, I mean, in society, there is a tendency to just go from extreme to extreme and then walang balance.
Walang balance. Yeah. Mahirap
So I think mental health awareness is very important. I think that is a huge generational gap because when you talk to boomers, maybe they don't completely understand it.
Like I feel like at some point, may iba na nagsasabi, especially the older generation. You'll get over it.
Yeah.
Like that's the number one thing that I hear na
Yeah.
lilipas din yan or hayaan mo na. Umiyak ka na lang, okay na yan bukas. Parang may mga ganun sila na parang they really shove it under the rug instead of addressing the issues at hand.
Yeah, and well, I do have an overarching feeling towards this topic, but let's get to Gen Z. How's Gen Z in mental health? Like, what's their thing, or what do you think is their thing?
From my POV, I appreciate that it's something na we're more aware of now and we can more, hindi naman sa assess, but we can actually pinpoint in ourselves. Like, pagdating sa sarili ko, I know if I really need to take a step back and really
You know what you're
chill
struggling
out.
with.
Well, I know what I'm struggling with. I can address it with you. But of course, it's a case-to-case basis and it depends on the personality of the person. But if, let's say, kunwari, burnout sa trabaho, I know when I'm about to reach that point. Because before, hindi ko alam eh. Like, grind lang ng grind hanggang sa sobrang hindi na kaya talaga.
Na-depress ka na.
Na-depress na, hindi
It's
na
much easier to
nagtrabaho.
identify because, I mean, there's a system for it.
Yeah, and just to put a story into it, I think there was a year that we both did so well at sobrang nag-grind tayo. As in, every single
was
day, 2021.
Okay.
Every single day, we were working. Every single day, like pagkagising natin hanggang sa matulog tayo, we were working on content and we were working so much. And then the holidays came and pagdating ng January, we looked at each other and we're like, let's take a break. But that break from 1 month became 2 months, became 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, 6 months tayo na hindi gumagalaw.
Yeah.
Because we were so burnt out from everything that was happening to
That's
us.
so correct.
And it came to the point that our manager was like, okay lang ba kayo? Okay lang ba
Yeah.
kayo? Is something wrong? Kasi hindi kayo sumasagot sa mga messages sa amin, wala kaming nakukuha na information, di kayo nagpo-post. I mean, kahit kausapin nyo lang kami, kahit di na kayo mag-post, kausapin nyo lang kami, ano ba nangyayari sa inyo?
Oh my God, can I share this story?
Okay.
Just to give everyone more context. So that year, we took in so much work and, we were very thankful for the work. It was very exciting na ang daming pumapasok.
Oo.
Looking back, our workday, we were working from Monday to Sunday.
Yeah.
And
no break.
We were putting in 16-hour workdays. No kidding.
Yeah.
Like
Grabe.
literally, I would be up at like, let's say 6, 7 a.m. and I would end my day at like midnight.
Yeah.
And I remember specifically that there were a couple of days when Bones and I were one-stop shops. So we were a content house.
Production house.
Within 2 people. So
As in
we were
kami
doing
lahat.
conceptualizing, scripting, shooting, editing, publishing, revising, and analytics between just the 2 of us, and we were taking on multiple projects at the same time. Yes, kasalanan namin sa just sharing what
Kasalanan
happens pag ginagawa mo to.
Tsaka lahat inaccept natin. Wala
Lahat
tayong
tinanggap-
hinindian.
Lahat tinanggap namin. Oh my God, I remember many days where I would literally wake up, get coffee, sit in front of my computer, and the next time that I would stand up, malapit na mag-midnight.
Hindi ka pa kumakain nun.
I mean, yeah. I mean, of course, I would get food and drinks and whatever from time to time, pero like, it was a very unhealthy
Yeah.
way of living.
Yeah, and even though like...
That's just a side story, just to kind of like hit home that Bones and I realized what burnout is after that.
That was the first time I ever experienced that.
Yeah.
That
And
kind of
then-
burnout.
And then to jump off Bonizi's story, yun nga, sabi namin 1 month on January the year after na rest muna tayo. And that 1 month became 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 because we just didn't feel like it.
Yeah.
And when we were able to take a step back and assess, we realized we did too much. And I'm still feeling the effects of that year
Yeah.
of over grinding and overworking. I still feel the physical effects now.
Yeah.
Like I wrecked my lower back because of sitting for 16 hours. Don't sit for 16 hours, guys. What a time.
No, and I think also parang we have to, because of that time and because of how we felt during that time, hindi lang kasi siya 6 months na quote-unquote rest. Actually, napabayaan talaga natin yung mga sarili natin even after that grind time because we weren't working out, we were eating really unhealthy. As in, we fell down a hole talaga. Like, akala natin nagre-rest tayo at we thought we were recuperating from that whole grind life time in our lives. Pero yung totoo niyan, we just dug ourselves a deeper hole because we weren't taking care of ourselves.
Yeah. And it's very hard to realize it in the moment. Like I said, we realized it
Years
during the
later.
recovery phase na.
No, towards the end na.
Yeah, after na, nung na-burnout na.
Oo, we had to be called out pa.
Yeah.
We had to be called out because trying to recover from a burnout, yun pala, lalo lang tayo na-burnout dahil sa ginagawa natin.
Yeah. So that's where a support system comes in. It's so hard to be an island. No man is an island.
No man is an island talaga.
And having that support system to be there and a support system that you trust to let you know na, yo, too much, step back.
You know what I think actually,
At wag matigas yung ulo.
wag matigas yung ulo. One thing that I really like about the team that we have, yung Team Daes, kumbaga, is we have people from all 3 generations. We have, diba? We have ourselves as millennials, and we have like some people in the team that are also millennials that we can like bounce off
You got the
of.
boomers.
We got the boomers. Mama, we just kidding. So we got the boomers also to give us that kind of perspective and their knowledge and expertise. But I think what's so refreshing also is that we also got to work with so many Gen Zs in Team
Especially
Daes.
nowadays, yeah.
Especially nowadays. Na parang, it was like a breath of fresh air na ang dami nilang new ideas, new ways of doing things, and even the ways that they would go about work. Parang we were like, wow, okay. Alam mo yung sa Telegram, tapos may, di ba may PFP ka, profile picture, tapos nakalagay on leave. Parang, dahil nilagay nila yung on leave, parang nahiya naman ako mag-message sa kanila, di ba? So parang, okay. So parang, they're really on break. I will respect that break that they're
They
taking.
emphasize their work status through their Telegram PFP.
Yeah, and I'm like, okay, I will not tag you in this message and I will tag somebody else that does not have the on leave. And you know what's so funny about it is that after a while, the other ones in the group
Started doing the same
started
thing.
doing the same. Hindi sila Gen Z, but they started doing the same thing. And they're like, yeah, you know what? I need to prioritize my mental health and myself, that I need to take a break from work from time to time. So having that refreshing aspect in our work life, parang thank you to the Gen Zs that make us realize that we actually need to take a break.
Now that you mentioned that story, if I were to say something about Gen Z and their relationship to mental health, I think they're in a better place because parang there are more systems and structures set up for them to identify certain things.
And support
And
systems.
as they grow up,
yeah.
parang they're able to fend for themselves a bit better. Unlike us, as we were growing up, it was a transition from no mental health awareness to super extreme mental
Yeah.
health awareness. And some of us naiwan, some of us took it to heart too much. So parang it was so difficult to find that balance because everything was so chaotic.
Yeah.
And I think now that everything has settled a bit more and Gen Z has grown into their own and grown into a world where mental health already existed, they're able to find that balance much better. And I think that's one of their advantages and a huge positive for that generation, I think.
Yeah.
And all generations moving forward.
So before we close the podcast, we have one more topic that I think is really essential to talk about in this day and age, and that's technology. Most especially nowadays na everything is so accessible through your smartphone.
Okay, can I lay down the groundwork for this?
Please.
At least for the boomer and millennial generation. Okay, I feel for the boomers in this regard. So if we took the brunt of that mental health transition, the boomers took the brunt of the digital and technology revolution that
Yeah.
we've had.
Yeah.
So imagine living out your childhood and school life and college life and early work life with no internet. And all of a sudden, 2024, internet is an absolute requirement to even just get up in the morning, diba? Parang when you get up in the morning, first thing most people do is like check an app, check
Yeah.
social media or whatever. So imagine such a difference in lifestyle from when they were growing up to whatever life is now.
Yep.
Ang bilis ng pagpalit ng lifestyle. And just imagine what the boomers felt. And I see that with a lot of relatives that parang naiwan sila and there's a lot of frustration. Of course, there are always those who are super progressive.
Yeah.
Pero there's also a big chunk na parang di nila naiintindihan and they can't seem to muster up the energy to learn something new or learn this new way of living.
Yeah.
And, I mean, there's happiness in seeing the older relatives who are super savvy.
Yeah.
But, I mean, there's also parang, I guess, the feels for those na naiwan and parang sometimes they're disgruntled, sometimes they're mad, you're always on your phone, or bakit ganyan yung trabaho mo, yung sumasayaw ka sa harap ng telephone, or parang ganun. So, just saying that there's a huge spectrum of boomers, some who are very well receiving of, the new lifestyle that we
Yeah.
have, the super fast evolving technology that we have, and of course there are those who have a lot more pushback. So I'm just saying that I've related to a lot of them.
Yeah.
And I feel for it because I also know that it's not a very easy transition to make. How do you feel about that?
I feel like when it comes to technology, there's so much good that can come out of technology, diba? Like easy access to information, you can easily search and do things and do your due diligence in terms of the information that you want. But at the same time, the access to information is so easy para maloko ka din. So,
Yung mga
I think
scam.
yung mga scam, yung mga propaganda, or even yung mga parang fake news na pinupush.
Tama.
And I feel like they really target the older generation because they're not as tech savvy, or they may not be knowledgeable in fact-checking or double-checking. Totoo ba tong website? I mean, a good example from our own
Dami na akong tito and
experiences.
tita na akala nila nanalo sila ng jackpot.
Oo. Or, akala nila matitriple yung pera nila.
Oo.
And, a good example of that from our own experience is when we were on a trip, na fake news din tayo that we got into an accident and something bad happened to us.
So,
And
ang dami nag-message ng relatives.
ang dami nag-message. And we were just, on vacation, enjoying our time, iba yung time zone. Pagkagising natin, ang dami nagme-message bigla, okay ka lang ba? Okay ka lang? So parang just things like that. And when you check the website, you're like, dude, this is so fake. Why did you
Yeah.
believe this?
Like to us, it's clearly a fake.
Yeah.
But to other, maybe the boomer generation, they aren't as savvy and they can't seem to pinpoint what's real or not right away or
Yeah.
as quickly as others. I mean, that's a challenge. And like I said, I do feel for that. But I think it's also just, it's part of life.
Yeah.
And if there's one thing that I picked out of that anecdote that Bones and I shared, it's that I told Bones that, let's never stop learning. Like, let's try to avoid falling into that pit or that mistake of
Yeah.
refusing to learn, refusing to be up to date, because life does not wait for anyone.
Oh yeah, and we're gonna
That-
become dinosaurs too.
Yeah. But that particular quote, life does not wait for anyone.
Yeah.
So if you have no intention of keeping up with it, then may iwan ka talaga. And I told Bones, there's so much to get out of, the lives that we have, that let's always be willing to put out the effort and the energy
course.
to learn something new,
Yeah.
to learn what the new generations are all about.
Yeah.
After Gen Z, you have Gen
Gen,
A,
Gen Alpha,
Gen
yeah.
B,
Yeah.
Beta. So if that's what they're gonna be called, but I'm saying I think if we do that, then I think we'll be okay.
And I think it's also in line with that. Kailangan maging patient din tayo sa mga mahal natin sa buhay na hindi masyadong tech savvy din.
Yes.
Because just because you learn something so fast doesn't mean that everybody's at the same pace as you, 'di ba? So, especially if those na hindi agad nila nakikita na scam tong text, or hindi nila alam na dapat hindi magka-click ng link sa mga text na sinesend sa'yo. So you have to be patient with them and constantly tell them and remind them na, hey, these are the things that we shouldn't do. Just like how they were with us when we were younger. Diba may mga things na sinasabi na, don't talk to strangers, don't do this, don't go outside, don't run across the road ng biglaan. It's just the same with technology and teaching maybe another generation or maybe somebody that isn't as tech savvy na, hey, these are the things that you need to look out for. Kung kailangan paulit-ulit mong sabihin, paulit-ulit din natin gawin.
Okay, so I guess tie that message into a nice little box. I think for all generations before and moving forward, if I were to think about it, it seems like a really important attitude to have, just generally,
Yeah.
is having an openness to change.
Yeah.
And even just saying that, ang dami nang pumapasok na trauma from other people that were like, no, this is how I do it. This is me. Ako to.
Ako to, hindi ako magbabago.
Diba?
Ay, may hugot.
So parang even for us at Bones, aside from being open to putting out effort and energy, we should always be open to change.
Yeah.
Because
Change is the only constant thing in this world.
that's a nice way to wrap it up, don't you think?
Change is the only constant thing in this world.
Okay. I mean,
And then what was your quote na parang,
life does not wait for anyone.
change is the only constant thing in this world and life does not change for anyone.
Wait for anyone.
Life does not wait for anyone. I think, in conclusion, there's so much that we can learn from each generation,
Yeah.
whether it be the boomers, the millennials, or the Gen Z. Each generation has their own pros and cons, but I think that if we take the positives out of each one and focus on the positives and work on, okay, how can I make myself a better person with the positives that I get from them?
Be open to it also.
Be open to it, be open to change. I think that would help us have a better perspective with things.
Of one another also.
Of one another also, not just within ourselves.
In the context of the topic of this podcast, hopefully reduce the generational gap.
Hopefully, yes. Before we end the podcast, we just like to remind everyone that this podcast is sponsored by Nescafe Decaf. As we wrap up the episode, we just want to remind you to embrace life's slower moments. Whether it's spending time with loved ones or just sitting quietly with a cup of Nescafe Decaf, those moments of calm are everything.
Life moves fast, but Nescafe Decaf is here to remind us that slowing down can be just as fulfilling. It's the same great coffee taste we love, just with less caffeine, which is perfect for unwinding.
So if you're ready to savor the simple joys, give Nescafe Decaf a try. Unwind and unwindang with Nescafe Decaf.
And there you go. That is the podcast episode. Thank you so much for joining us. We hope you guys learned a thing or two about what we think. If you guys have any 2 cents to share, please drop it in the comment section.
Yes, give us your very extreme comments. Well, extreme talaga.
Or not so extreme.
Or not so extreme. Give us your 2 cents. Yeah, that's what we want to hear. What are your own experiences with the boomer, millennial, and Gen Z generation? But for now, this is Bones and Fofo, and this is Behind Relationship Goals, and we'll see you next time.
Bye, guys.
When will that be?